Hey there, my name is Matthew Wallace, and I wanted to go over some things I've been actually brushing up on, and specifically whenever you're doing coding interviews, or this is just good as a programmer to go back over this stuff. I try to do this maybe once a day, once every other day, and the algorithm that I've been checking out is called stack from queue. And basically, what the thing does is you basically have a stack, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and then we have a queue that actually allows you to dequeue the stack and send the data back to the user through the program. So let's just talk about this stuff real quick, and I'm actually going to just refer to the blog post that I'm going to be coming out with. So you guys can check that out once I've posted it. The URL that you see here will change a little bit. But anyway, what you're going to be doing is basically using the concept of a stack. So what that actually means is we use the last in, first out method. So the way I tried to explain this in here is basically you just ignore any misspellings you have in here because I haven't proofread this, but basically what's going to happen is imagine you have a box or a jar and you put in let's say you put in a nickel, and then you put in a penny, and then you put in a dime, and then you put in a quarter. So the order that you would get those back if you reach your hand in to get something back out of the jar would be in the reverse order. So you would get the quarter first, and then you would get the dime, and then you would get the penny, and then you would get the nickel. So hopefully I repeated those back in reverse order properly. So what we want to do in Java, I have an example of what a stack would actually look like, because they actually have a stack object that you can use. And what we're going to be building is we're going to have this enqueue method here. And what this does is actually adds an element to the stack. So we have this old stack here that we have this new stack object that we're going to be using, and we're going to add stuff to the queue. So let me just show you how to program this real quick, and then I'm going to do another video on doing this with a language that I like to use a lot called Hacks. But first, let's just do it in Java, because that's a little bit more familiar to you programmers out there. So I'm going to go over to IntelliJ, and I'm going to create a new project here. Let me bring this over to where you guys can see it. Let's just do a Java project, and we're going to go next. And we don't want to create it from a template per se, so let's go next again. And I'm just going to put this in this Java directory that I have here on my machine. I like to use Dropbox a lot because I switch machines sometimes. So let's just call this Q, well, hit my tab button there, Q from stack Java. And click finish. And we're going to open this in a new window and bring this over where you guys can see what's going on. All right. Actually, let me take up as much of this recording space here as I can. All right. So we're going to go in here, and we have a source directory, and let's go ahead and create a new Java class, and let's just call it Q. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and create a public Q, just like that. And then I'm going to copy a couple of things just to kind of speed this up a little bit. I don't want the video to take up too much of your time, and then you can kind of go back and see what's going on yourself. So this is going to import the Java Util stack for us. We've got two private variables, one called old stack and one called new stack, and you're going to see what those are for in just a minute. And then also I need a variable that actually I can use later called top element. So I'm going to go ahead and create that here, and I'm going to set it to an integer value of -1. And then in our constructor method, we are going to create a old stack and a new stack so that those are ready to be used. And then, sorry for all the copying and pasting, I just figure you guys wouldn't really want to sit here and watch me type. So let's just talk through it. So we're going to create a public method called enqueue, and it's going to accept an integer value. And then we need a boolean here to return. This is going to be important later. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a try catch block just in case something goes wrong. And it's always good practice to have this in Java. It'll help catch any errors, and things will fail gracefully. And we can give yourself a system out print line here just to kind of express what might have gone wrong in this situation. But basically all we're doing is we are pushing things onto this new stack, and since we are expecting an actual integer object, we're creating it here as we push that into the stack. Sorry about that. So we're creating a new integer object, and we're just passing in the element that we are, which is basically an integer. So anyway, so that's our enqueue. So this is the back to what I was saying earlier about the jar that we're putting the money into. This is basically allowing us to put, you know, an integer value into a container or a stack is what this is allowing us to do. Now, this doesn't have to be an integer. This could actually be an object. However you want to use stack, this could be whatever you want it to be. So then the next thing we want to do is we want to dequeue the stack. So in my blog post, let me show you that again real quick. We have this concept of a queue. So a queue actually is a container that uses the first in, first out principle. So what a queue actually does is if you put a penny, a dime, a nickel in, and you can't get anything that's on top out first. You want the first item that went in. The user is going to expect that item to come back first. So if the first item that I put into the jar was a penny, and then a dime gets placed inside of the jar, the first thing I should expect back out is the penny first and not the dime in this example. So the code for dequeuing looks something like this, and I'm gonna actually just copy this stuff over into our Java project here. So now we have our dequeue method, and what our dequeue method does is it instantiates this top element, because remember I said we needed this for something. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if the old stack is empty, which is this is just going to be this container that we're going to move things into. This is our queue. We're going to put stuff in this container, and if there is nothing in it, then we're going to empty the new stack. Basically we're going to say, hey, if the new stack isn't empty, then I want to grab the topmost element and I want to put it in the old stack, or this is our queue. So I'm going to actually put a comment here, and I'm going to say this is our queue right here. And actually let's just kind of specify that up here in the where we instantiate these objects. Let's just say this is the queue and this is the stack. And that might be a little bit confusing because we're using stack in both scenarios, but the stack object is this could be an array instead of a stack. We don't, and I'm going to show an example in another video where the language that we're going to use does not have a stack object, and we're going to use an actual typed array instead. So if you like this video, check out the other one after you have a look at this. So anyway, we've got this dequeue and we've got this enqueue. So what's going to happen is if it's not empty, if the old stack is not empty, then we need to remove items from it in order of operation of which they were added. So what this is going to do is basically say we're we're going to peek into the old stack. We're going to get that value, and we're going to basically pop that out of the old stack. And all this method does is actually removes it after we get a reference to it, and then we assign the reference of that object to this top element, and we return it to the user. So we'll have a more visual understanding of this once we print some stuff out to the console. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add a couple of little convenience methods that we need. One is going to tell us whether the stack and the queue are empty or not, and the other one is going to tell us the size that we have of everything. So, and I'll explain that once I copy and paste this in here. So basically we have two methods. One says is empty, and all that is going to do is return a Boolean value that tells us whether the old stack and the new stack are empty or not. If either one of these has anything in it, then this is going to actually return false. Otherwise, it's going to return true. The second method that we have is just the size method, and all this does is get the size of the old stack and the new stack, and it returns that value. So if you have like 3 items in here and you have 2 items in here, then it's going to return 5. So that's all that's for, and you'll see more about what those do here in a second. So this is really all you need to do a stacked from queue algorithm. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add a main Java class, and I'm going to copy some more stuff just so that we can speed this right along. So let me grab everything in here and then we'll talk about it. Let's see here. First we want a main method, and basically we'll instantiate a new main object here. So and this is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to run everything in the main method. So whenever this main object runs, it's just going to run this code. So all we're going to do is we're going to create a new queue, which is this class here. And then once we create it, we're going to just check. We're going to say, hey, is this queue empty? So that's what that method is that we have in the queue class. And then once we see that, then we're going to run a for loop and we're going to fill the queue up. And we're basically going to queue it up with an integer going 0 through 50. So that's all we're going to do here is we're going to add an item to the queue. And essentially what's going to happen behind the scenes is when we add something to the queue, it gets added to the new stack, just like that. So then what we're going to do is we're going to system out print what's the size of the queue, just so that we can check and see how many items do we have in the old and the new stack altogether. Then what we want to do is we want to assign a size value, and we're going to get that from the queue. We're going to say how many items do I have so that I know how many items I need to return. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, if the queue is not empty, we're going to run a for loop to empty it. So each time through the loop, what we're going to do is call queue.dequeue, and it's going to return items to us in the order in which it has received them. So then, just to double check ourselves, we're going to system out print line and make sure that the stack is empty once we have completed running this little program. So let us give this a try. So in IntelliJ, I'm just going to edit this guy here, and I'm going to create a new Java applet, and I'm going to say main. I think this is how to do it. Actually, let's do application. So let's grab this guy right here. That's the guy we want to run. I'm going to hit apply, hit OK. Well, let's see. What did I do wrong? All right. I'm going to pause this just for a second so you guys don't have to watch me do this. Okay, so once I've set that up, let me just show you what I have here in my configuration. So I have a main application that we can run, and I'm gonna hit OK. So I'm gonna right click on main here, and I'm gonna just say debug, and you should see a console pop up here. All right, so let's scroll through this console real quick here. So what we have is hey, is the queue empty? And it says true, that it is empty. So then you notice we have a bunch of system print lines right here that basically say adding item, and it goes 0 all the way down through 49. So we've essentially added 50 items starting at 0. So then we say, what's the size of the queue? And then you'll notice we're going to dequeue the item. So what's the first item that we get back? Well, it's the first item that we put into the queue. And then once we get all the way down to the bottom, we hit, dequeuing item 49. Then we say, hey, is the queue empty? Basically, and it says, yep, it's empty. And that's it. That is queue from stack algorithm for you guys. If you got any questions, let me know. I thought this was pretty cool. These are good little exercises to do daily if you just want to kind of brush up on some problem solving, kind of algorithm working through some stuff like that. If there's something in particular you would like to see, then please leave something in the comments. I'd love to get some more ideas of some algorithms to take a look at. Nothing too complex. I'm not that smart, but I definitely enjoy like writing these and figuring them out and understanding them. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will see you again soon.